So I did one thing with this shed that's a little unusual, but there's reasons for it. The concrete is not level. Now, why would I do that? Well, the main reason is because when I load this shed, I use my tractor with forks. If you've done any work with forks, whatever you're carrying is going to be at the angle that the tractor is. So if I were to make that level, whenever I were to load it, I'd be coming in at an angle and then dropping it down, which I could do and pull it out. But then when I went to go back in, it's hard to get those forks underneath. So it's a lot easier to just be at the same level. This was already here. This is at this pitch. You know, it works for water shedding and everything, so I just went with it. There I've laid a couple of straight boards and leveled them so you can see the difference. Now what I'm building here is a simple shed roof. There's going to be an opening here. This is going to be a big swinging door. So all I have here is a post, and a beam, and then the back wall is going to be studs. So I'm going to have to measure each stud and add this length to it to get that wall, so that the wall is actually going to be taller on this side and come down so that the top plate ends up level. And then I'm going to cover it with metal so I don't have to worry about embers igniting this thing. There you go. The other thing is this pad actually ramps up a little bit, and that's because the water drainage is going this way and that way. So when it rains, what's going to happen is the water is going to come to this point, kind of go along this little valley, and then shed off. I'm building the shed entirely out of treated lumber. Also a little unusual, but when I checked the prices, it really wasn't going to add much in expense, and then I don't have to worry about stuff rotting down the road. I went along here with my level board and I marked, see that says 7 1/8, that says 5 7/8. I marked each stud how the difference in length needs to be. Now I'm going to lay them out here and cut them all out. So this is my top and bottom plate. Alright, so we're doing layout here. I'm doing my studs 24 on center. A mistake people will often make is tape measure has the two foot mark, 2 foot, 4 foot, 6 foot. The mistake that they're going to make is they'll come here and they'll mark 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet. Well then, as long as you put your stud centered on that line, which you have to do by eyeball then you're okay. Because when you want to lay plywood on this, you want the plywood to go from the end of the wall to halfway on a stud. So if I have this mark here at 8 feet, and then I put the stud on this side of it, the plywood isn't going to hit on anything. You want the plywood to hit right on the middle of a stud right there. So what I do is I mark 3/4 shy of the 8 foot. That's the easiest way. So find the 8 feet minus 3/4, boom, make your mark, put an X, that's where your stud goes. The top plate's going to be the same. So you can just square across. Don't forget your X. That keeps you from putting the stud in the wrong place. What in the hell is that? That would be shade. Yeah, I know, kind of lame, but it's hot and it's sunny, and this keeps me working. A lot easier with the nail gun, but you can do this by hand as well. If you're driving them with a hammer, you're probably going to want to stand on them. Start your nail and nail it while standing on them. Now when I pick this up, nice and level. I need to put some anchor bolts in the bottom. So now I'm going to build this front wall. This is going to be a king stud with 2 jacks on either end, and then a beam going across the middle, and this whole thing will be an opening. The lower end is 7 1/4 inches longer to get the top level. So it's kind of the same thing I did there, except I only have to do it at 2 points. Alright, first I'm going to make my beam. Now, this is a 2x10, and when you're making a beam, generally it's supposed to be the same thickness as your wall. Well, my walls are 3 1/2 inches because they're 2x4s. These are 1.5 inches, so 2 of them is 3 inches. So if I put a piece of 1/2 inch ply in between, I will end up at 3 1/2 inches. And this ply is not structural, it's just a spacer, so I'm using some old scrap I had laying around. Start at one end. Work your way down. So this one I need to pull this board that way, or this board that way. So what I'm going to do is toenail it. That actually pulled it enough. If it didn't, I would have taken my carpenter's hammer and just hammered on that until it pulls this around. So there we go. Now we're ready to nail it up. I need some braces on this thing. It'll work. There. That's it. Round. Close it. For those of you who aren't familiar with framing, this is how typical home construction is done. I'm cutting some corners on this shed, but this is normal. You've got your beam sitting on top of 2 jacks. If it was a smaller beam with a smaller opening, you'd only need 1 jack, and the beam size varies depending on your span. This is a little underbuilt. This probably wouldn't be good enough for a house because those are just 2x10s, but this little shed, it'll be fine. And then the king stud holds everything together. So any weight on the beam, it can either be put on with hangers or sitting on top of the beam, gets transmitted to the jacks, which goes straight down to either the ground or whatever if you're on the 2nd floor. So I've got this board just sitting here. I screwed this little scrap on for it to set on, and I clamped this one on. And that is exactly where I want my rafter to sit. I've got it so that it's intersecting the top of the wall right on the edge, and then it's overhanging in the back just as much as I want. And then the front, I'm going to cut it down. Cut this down a little bit so that a 2x6 will give me an overhang, and then I have to cut it off so that it'll be vertical. Now I can just take a pencil and mark out my little cutout. Now we'll do the same right here. So 3.5. Little trick of a speed square, put a pencil in that hole, and then you can just mark that way. Now this angle here is just over 15 degrees. So then I can cut that out. That will be my pattern for all the rest of the rafters. Looks pretty good. Yeah, that'll be my pattern. Wow. Four down, 3 to go. So I've got my layout done here. On top of the wall, I've marked a line and an X as to where the rafter should lay. And you'll notice that X is right on top of the stud. It's the exact same layout you use for the wall. That way your weight gets transmitted right down through the stud. Now in typical home construction, you actually have 2 top plates. This is the top plate here. I've only got 1. The main reason to have 2 is when you want to tie your walls together. If there was another wall coming out at a 90 degree right here, well then this plate would go here. First plate of this wall would go here, and the second one would overlap, and it would allow you to nail them together. I don't have any need for that here, so I saved some money and just got one plate on top. So if you look there, that one matches up pretty good. This one though, I've got a gap. Same with this one. Same with that one. And then they're back to being good. So what's going on there? That beam is bowed. So I need to pull that together before I nail those. I'm just going to screw this scrap on to the side of this rafter. Yep. That did the trick. Gaps are closed. Alright, so I'm going to put this fascia board on. This really gives these some strength. Right now they can wobble around because they're just toe-nailed in, but once I tie them all together, it makes it a box and makes it much, much stronger. Hey, can you give me a hand? Yeah, you, the one watching the video. Come on, pick up the end of that board and hold it up there. No, you're just going to sit there? Man, that is pathetic. And then I'll cut this off later once I get the final board on there. Alright, now I'm going to put a metal roof on this with a 2-inch overhang. This is obviously not the fascia I'm going to use. This is a 2x4. I'm going to use a 2x6. And you can see now, if I used a 2x6 and I didn't cut these down, this would be wider than the 2x6. If I just tack this board like it is up there, it's going to be like that. So the roof pitch is going to come and then it's going to go to a 90. So that metal won't be supported for that last 1.5 inches. And then it's going to come out 2 more inches, which would actually mean it's overhanging 3.5 inches. That's really no good. What I'd rather do is have this board supported all the way to the edge. So what I'm going to do is put an angle on there. Basically, I need to cut an angle like that, and then I can move the board up slightly, take that off, and then it'll be fully supporting all the way to the edge. Take your saw, set it to 15 degrees, and there you can see I've got that angle. Now before I'm done, I put the saw back because you know I'm going to forget next time I make a cut. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to frame in this end wall. So I've cut out the plate. I'm going to do my layout from the end there so that a piece of plywood will go all the way to the corner. And I'm going to mark 23 1/4, which is 3/4 of an inch, half of a 2x4, shy of 24. And where it really counts is here at this 48, because this is where the first piece of plywood is going to stop. So 47 1/4.
And then I use a straight board and a level to transfer those marks up to the rafter.
The 2x4 is going to come up, but see, this is at an angle, so I'm going to cut it at an angle. So I have to measure, I have to know if I'm measuring to the long point or the short point. And this is going to be to the long point, just because of where the X is. I'm putting some cutouts here, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to close up every stud bay. I actually want it opened at the bottom so that air can come through here, because I want this to breathe. This is a wood drying shed essentially. I'm going to put firewood in here and let it sit and dry. There needs to be air circulation. There's going to be purlins and a metal roof, so there's going to be plenty of ways for air to get out. So I want it to come in at the bottom, out the top. Alright, that was day one. Pretty tired, but I had a couple distractions. If it hadn't been so hot, I definitely could have gotten more done. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think that thing's going anywhere. I went ahead and finished out the plywood. Nothing exciting there, just piecing stuff together. Going for a 12-inch overhang here. All right, I'm going to do the same thing on the other 4, and then we'll come back and put on the rake board. And this is just a 2x4 cut to the same length and angle on that end as the rest of the rafters. So the first one I put down was the middle one, and I measured what my distances were at one of the ends and then made the middle one match. In other words, I pulled this board back and forth until it was 12 inches from that board, and then I pulled this one until it was where it was supposed to be. And you make them all the same and that will straighten them out. After that was in place and nailed on, I just put them down and nailed them and then cut the ends off. Pretty easy. So now that's ready for metal.
These metal roof panels go down very quickly. You just screw them down, you order them to the length that you need. Putting the roof on took me 40 minutes. The walls took a little bit longer because each piece had to be cut individually and there's a lot of angles. But same thing, you just put it on and screw it down. I'm in the process of building the door for this. This is a bit of a rig, so I'm not really filming the whole thing. I'm making it up as I go along. But that's an old, just an old farm gate. It was actually the same gate that was used on the old shed, so that survived the fire. I've attached some wood verticals to it. I actually had to extend it out. I turned down some round and then left that square, extended it out, put a catch, and so now I've got a frame that I can screw metal to. That's going to swing open like that and allow me to load that with my tractor. So the door works nice. One more thing I had to do was to put a cable here and a turnbuckle to support the end, because all that metal on it, it was sagging too much. I put the cable attachment right in line with the hinges so that as it rotates it doesn't change its tension, and it works great. It doesn't sag at all. It goes right back into the latch when it closes. Super easy. The other cool thing I did was this stop right there. I just screwed on a board, and you'll see what happens when that door opens all the way up. Just makes for a nice stop there. So the only other thing I have left to do, well, that wind is really blowing, and that's why I have to do this. I want to put some kind of cane bolt, and I'll put a hole in the concrete so I can open it all the way up, drop it in, and then no matter what, it's going to stay put in the wind. Right now, it's closing itself. Oh, I also have to paint this boiler right here. It just doesn't end. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.